Welcome everyone to week 2. My name is Mr. Neville and I will be your guest lecturer for this week. Today we will be covering the oldest and most widely held theories in international relations, realism and liberalism. We will cover the main attributes and assumptions of both theories. We will cover their normal positions and we will compare and critique both theories. Firstly, we will be covering realism. The primary concern of realism is power. It sees power as the most important concern for states, so they will pursue it at all costs. Policy will be made according to what can maximize a state's power. They define this power mainly in terms of coercive force. This is generally considered to be military power. They do also consider economic power to be significant, especially in the long term, as it can be turned into military strength. If you have a large and strong economy, you can build a large military, and if you have an advanced economy, you can produce the most advanced technology. There are 4 basic assumptions of realism. The first is that the international system is one of anarchy. This means that there are no rules that states have to obey and no governments above them. This means that a state's survival is its primary concern, and it also means that there is a greater chance of conflict. 2. That states are the most important actors. While they acknowledge other actors, states have the largest militaries and therefore the most power, and so should be the primary concern. Furthermore, states can only control any other actor if they really want to. 3. States are viewed as single units. A realist does not break up a state or look inside it. They are viewed as a single person with one view. This is a common practice, as an action carried out by a state is often referred to as America did X. This implies a state-centered view. Number 4. States are rational actors. Realists assume that a state will always act in a rational manner. This does not mean that they will only be good or act in a morally upright way, but they will calculate the benefits against the cost of any decision. The rational choice will be the choice that maximizes their power compared to other states. Morality has a very limited or no role in international relations. This does not mean that they will always make the best decision. Realists do admit that states can make bad decisions. This will be based off underestimating their opponent or having limited information, but they will also always make the calculation. Now, the final 3 assumptions of realism are clearly simplifications of what a state actually looks like. They would claim, though, that this is necessary in order to view the world without making it a complicated mess. Furthermore, on the important decisions which realists care the most about, states will follow these assumptions. A common metaphor are bulls in a pool game. If the states are the bulls, they will act the same, so we need only concern ourselves with the forces that act upon them. So what are the main critiques of realism? Well, all of the main assumptions can and have been challenged. While most would say that anarchy for the most part exists, they would point to larger international bodies like the United Nations or NATO as organizations who can minimize it. They would also say that anarchy does not have to lead to conflict. If we look at these modern groups, anarchy may have been more paramount in history, but today it is not the only condition. States being the only actor is also criticized for similar reasons. While in history there may have only been states, today there are many different types of actors who are also important. Some multinational corporations have more money than a lot of countries. One could also claim that states can be pulled in different directions by the groups and people within it. By making a state a unitary actor, you are oversimplifying how a state really looks. Finally, you could criticize realism for not having enough predictive elements. While it can tell you why a certain conflict happened and what the cause, it can struggle to tell you when a conflict will happen. Now let us turn to the main theoretical critique to realism, and that is liberalism. Their main focus is the critique of anarchy. They focus on how it can be mitigated in international relations. While most liberals would admit the state of anarchy exists, they are far more positive view about it. They see people as rational enough to overcome the worst aspects of anarchy. This theory is far broader than realism, which can make it more difficult to study, but it can be broken up into two broad categories, which we shall look at now, and those are liberal institutionalism and complex interdependence theory. Liberal institutionalism accepts many of the realist premises, but they arrive at quite different conclusions. It claims that anarchy can lead to cooperation. States can both become better off at the same time. A realist would say that states will only enter into an agreement if they are benefiting more than the other. This makes an agreement less likely. Liberals of this school think that they will enter in if they both can benefit. This can be achieved because these states will have a shared history of cooperation and agreement, which means they can trust more. This is done through shared principles and values. Furthermore, over time, cooperation builds up, making it more profitable, while the cost of defection also goes up, making it less likely for a state to do so. By building up a relationship, states can come to a period of reciprocity, where the strategy of one country is matched by the previous move of the other state. This is particularly relevant in the economic realm. But what about cheating? A state may need to break an agreement in order to survive, as a realist would argue. In this way, liberal institutionalists agree with realists. States do not agree to collaborate because they are altruistic, but that they are still pursuing their own self-interest. In most cases, they argue collaboration is the best and sometimes only way to act. If we look at North Korea, for example, they have chosen not to collaborate, and it has certainly hurt them. Now let us turn to complex interdependence. It takes the liberal argument a step further than institutionalism, primarily by broadening their horizon beyond the state. They assume that there is a much wider array of actors in international politics, such as companies, international organizations, political parties, charities, and people. These actors, while significant, do not have military forces to back them up, and so are less likely to see conflict as necessary. These different actors create a web of relationships between states at many levels. This ties states together and makes cooperation much more likely. If our economies are tied together, it would make it impossible for a state to attack another. They also assume that there is a greater variety of goals beyond just security, issues like the environment or resources and population. Furthermore, for these issues, there is little consideration who has the most power. They instead just trying to solve a problem. Military action is far less relevant for most of these issues. All of these factors combined make cooperation more likely and the world less conflictual than realists believe. So how would a realist critique liberalism? Realists have often called liberalism as idealist. While trust makes sense when the world is peaceful, it could become dangerous for a state to rely upon it when the atmosphere becomes more hostile. An example of this could be the run-up to World War II, when there was too much trust placed upon the words of Hitler. Realists do not necessarily disagree with some of the views of liberals, but these positive relationships can only last for so long, and in the end, a state must rely upon self-help. Realists also view complex interdependence as a very recent phenomenon, and they are trying to explain the basics of international relations over hundreds of years. A counter to this from liberals could be that the world is moving more in this direction, so it has become the most accurate way to view the world, if a bit complicated, which is another fault realists have pointed out.